Okay, I'd like to thank you, Jerry, for coming up today and videotaping. We'll be presenting this both at Maidens and Hickory Knoll, and I thank both groups for making that happen. Or I thank Cindy and David, respectively, from Hickory Knoll and Maidens, for stepping up and doing the sermon. If this, for some reason, y'all don't like this, or however you want to approach it, I'm excited about the study. This is session 2. We have, we've gone from the garden to the flood to Abraham. We start with Abraham and we go through Joseph in captivity, or in prison, and then we start session 3. We'll go from Genesis 12 to Genesis 37, pretty much, in this sermon and then in the class that will follow. I'm very grateful for the class, and Maidens, you'll have your books soon, and you could then pick up the class too. I understand the discussions have been great. Sermon today is Nation Building God Style. We have, of course, we're in the process of nation building in Iraq now. We're also in the process of nation building in Kosovo now. We have had great successes as a nation in Germany and Japan. Not so much lately. When we do nation building, we're very big on roads, hospitals, infrastructure. We build that, we put a lot of money. I looked at the money being spent per person in Germany and Japan and what's being spent in Kosovo, and it's like 20 times as much. And I'm not sure that we're getting the results we need. That's nation building American style. Now we're going to talk about nation building God style. God takes a bit of a different approach. God takes a very individual approach. He takes an approach of family and relationships. There are a lot of begats in Genesis because the relationship is personal. It is person to person. We start with a family. Well, actually, we start with an old couple. Probably that cute old couple, but old couple nonetheless. Abram and Sarai. They travel. Their father, Terah, his father gets the call from God to move, from Ur to move. He's not quite sure where, he just knows he's going to move. So we have movement, we have call and movement, and walking with God and trust. Terah images that for him, and he gets as far as, maybe it's Haran, and decides he's had enough. So Abram and Sarai continue, and they get to a place called Mamre. It is, Terebinth Oaks are there. What I've noticed in reading the Word, and what's coming out to me lately, there's a lot of place names. There are places where God has touched people, spoken to them directly, and they mark that by rivers, by stones. God is very much mixing us with nature and giving us a context in which to work in. We have a garden, we have a desert, we have, in this case, we have oak trees, cave, a rock where a dream occurs and angels are going up and down this ladder, and we have a river, Jabbok. I'd like to talk about those things for a few minutes. What I miss is the give and take. Maybe Jerry can fill that in and interrupt me and ask the questions, which is fine. I like that. It gives me something to work with.
In other words, Joe's not here.
Yeah, Joe and David, neither one here. So we can, Jerry, if you have a question, just go ahead and ask it. Take on that role and say it. Abram and Sarai, older couple, in their 70s. And God visits them in the form of messengers, 3 of them, meet with him at the Oaks of Mamre. That tree, by the way, Abraham's tree, is still there. I did some research on it, and the tree's like 5,000 years old. It is a living reminder. Well, not so much living now. In 1976, the tree was declared dead, but in 78, a sprout was found on it. So it is coming back to life. In the 7th century, it was almost cut all up by Christian pilgrims going to the site and wanting to take a piece of it back with them. But it has since revived. So there is a touch, an Ebenezer, a touchstone. where you could go and actually see that. And the caves where Sarah was buried, they're right beside it. This is the place where the three messengers came and told Abram that he was going to be the father of a great nation, and Sarah would give birth. This is also, if you'll remember the story, where Sarah started laughing. And God said, "You were laughing. Why are you laughing?" She said, "I wasn't laughing." But she was. And this is the place where Sarah laughed, and Abram got kind of a joke, got a chuckle out of that too. That had to be very strange news indeed. There at the Oaks, the three invited Abraham to walk with them. They walked outside, and one of the angels, God, the messenger, said, "Abraham, look at the stars, and your offspring will be as numerous as the stars. You will have more offspring than the sands of the ocean." Again, tying us into nature and creation in a great way. Also, as they were going to leave, they looked from there down to Sodom and Gomorrah, and they headed from there down the hill down to Sodom and Gomorrah. Abram caught wind of what they were going to do and what they had planned to do, and negotiated with them. "Well, for 50 would you destroy?" And then Abram goes through this great give and take with God. God says, "Okay, finally, for the sake of 5, I won't do it." But eventually it was just Lot. Not even his sons-in-laws went with them. They got Lot out, but Lot went grudgingly. When Abram was told to go, all the scriptures say is he went. When Abram needed to pitch his tent, he did it. When Abram needed to move, he did it. When Abram needed to take his son Isaac up to Mount Moriah, again, another reference to nature in that setting, he did it. Lot didn't want to go, and he wasted time, and they had to kind of push him out. And they said, "Go to the hills," and Lot complained and said, "That's too far." So he went to this city called Sears. And that's where God worked with him, and he stayed there. And then, of course, his daughters, the Ammonites, came from that line, and the Moabites, not a good thing. What we learned, or what I learned, is God had a plan. God had a will, God's will to be done, and Sarah got impatient with God and the plan. Sarah thought, "Well, I'll just give Abraham my maidservant Hagar to kind of move this thing along." And man, that always get into trouble when we think we know better than God or can manipulate the plan. As it turned out, Ishmael being born as Abraham's first of the 7 sons. He had 2 sons by Sarah, and 5 more by his wife later on. That's where the song "Abraham had 7 sons" comes from. Whenever we decide we know better than God, there is a wrench thrown into the plan, but it didn't stop God. God still worked with what was there. But God also defines family in a way that we don't. God took care of Hagar. God took care of Ishmael, made Ishmael the father of 12 tribes in his own kingdom. But Ishmael was not the child of promise. The child of promise was Isaac. And as the story goes on, God goes from talking about Isaac to Abraham's only son, and redefines the order and birth and family. It says, "My choice is Isaac." Isaac marries Rebekah, and when it came time to pass on the birthright, Rebekah decides that her favorite, Jacob, is going to receive the birthright, and Esau, being the oldest, was Isaac's favorite, and that's who Isaac decided was going to have the birthright. Jacob came out of the womb. Esau came out first. He was red and hairy. That's why they call him Esau. Means Edom and hairy. And Jacob came out grabbing his heel. Jacob means heel grabber. He was constantly conniving. He met his Laban. When it was time to get a wife for Isaac, Abraham said, "No, don't take it from these people around here. Go on out to my home country and go see my brother and nephew and pick a wife from over there." Rebekah becomes Isaac's wife. And when it came time for the birthright, what did Rebekah say? "Jacob, let me tell you what you're going to do. you're going to get the skin, you're going to rub the field on it, you're going to get skins because Esau is real hairy, you're going to wrap it on your arms, you're going to prepare the food that Isaac likes, and you're going to give it to him, and you're going to get the birthright. So, Rebekah lied to her husband. Jacob lied straight out to his father. Isaac asked him, you sound like Jacob. Are you Esau my son? And he said, yes, Father, I am. Bold-faced lie. Bold-faced lie. That kind of attitude is going to catch up to Jacob. Jacob, when he went to get his wife, wanted Rachel, and he got tricked by Laban into working 7 more years. He had to work 7 years for Rachel, whom he didn't get. He got Leah, the older daughter. He worked 7 more years and got Rachel, whom he really wanted. And in the meantime, he did some genetic engineering and tricked Laban out of crops and fields and livestock to the point where Laban just wanted him to leave. Said, please go. And they found out that one in the party had taken something that belonged to Laban. So Laban is coming after Jacob. After he tells Jacob to leave, Laban is pursuing him from Paddan-aram. He's trying to go back home, but he hadn't been home in a long time, and his home is where Esau lives. Esau has 400 men. Jacob gets word that Esau is coming to greet him. Well, he doesn't know what that means really, to greet him. Probably to exact some revenge. At least that's what Jacob thought. That's what Jacob would do. Jacob gets to the river Jabbok. Jacob is tired. He's worn out. He's worried. He hasn't done a lot of praying to this point. Jacob didn't seem to be a religious person. But at the river, he has to stop and gather his wits about it. Because that's what he's lived by, is his wits. He's lived by his wits. He goes, and in a panic, he tries to devise a plan. He has a dream where a ladder comes down and angels are going up and down. And he starts to negotiate with God and says, well, this is great. This is a place of blessing. I'll put a monument here. And God, if you're really truly in this place and get me out of this, I'll do this. I'll clean my room. I'll go to Sunday school. I'll pay my tithing. I'll give canned goods. I'll volunteer my time at the shelter. I'll do whatever I need to do. And he's making this negotiated deal with God because that's what he's good at, negotiating. And he figures he can negotiate his way into a relationship with God. Esau's coming. He's warned of this. And he starts sending over his livestock, thinking, okay, I can give this to Esau, maybe he'll let me live. So he sends over his livestock, and he sends over some riches, sends over some silver that he started from Laban. All this time, Laban is coming from this side, and Esau is coming from this side, and he's at the river. And as the night wears on, he sends over his wives, and he sends over his children, hoping that when Esau sees his sister-in-laws and his nieces and nephews, that he will soften up. Jacob had a wrestling match with God that night. Jacob was at the end of the line. Everything he thought he knew had come undone. It hadn't served him. He had a dysfunctional family. He was looking for the fun in that. It just wasn't there. And he became very worried. And he pours his heart out. A stranger greets him, and they wrestle. And they struggle. To daybreak. And at the end of it, Jacob has a limp. But he also has God in a stranglehold and wants to elicit something from God. He wants to elicit a blessing. Now, here is God, bigger than the universe, allowing himself, God's self, to be wrestled with and negotiated with by his creation for the purpose of finding a nation, finding someone who is worthy enough to bear the name Israel, worthy enough to strive with God. Jacob, now Israel, because he's renamed, has done what we also need to do. And that is struggle with God to find out who we are. In the process, he is wounded. Henry Nouwen talks about a wounded healer. Jacob doesn't, from that point on, there's still a little bit of that conniving, but he knows, as Abraham knew before him, and Sarah knew before him, that to be in this relationship with God and be this new nation, there needs to be total trust, total faithfulness. That's what Abraham learned. And trusting in God's timing. Jacob learned that at the end of it all, it is total surrender to God that moves us past the boundary, moves us past the river. The scriptures say that Jacob passed over the river Jabbok. It is here that his life was changed. He was renamed. And instead of passing the wound on to others, which has been his modus operandi, he decided to help others and be a wounded healer instead of a wounded wounderer. We are also called as the new nation to strive with God and ask the serious questions. Why is there suffering? Why is there death? What are we here to do? We, as the new nation Israel, take that mantle on. Jacob hit the wall, and his cleverness couldn't carry him any further. He needed, in 1 Corinthians 1:19, Paul says, "For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the cleverness of the clever I will set aside." When he hit rock bottom, he bumped into God, where he didn't know he would find God. He fell hard, but he fell hard into the arms of a faithful and loving God. Jeremiah said when he hit bottom in a literal pit, "God is a God of compassion. His compassions for me cannot fail. They are new every morning. Great is his faithfulness. Great is his faithfulness." Psalm 73:26. "My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever." Psalm 46:1. "God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble." And in Hebrews, so what can we say confidently? "The Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What will man do to me?" Jacob has 12 sons. Israel. One of the sons is a dreamer, and for that he offends his father and mother, and he also offends his brothers, and he gets thrown into a pit and has a journey in Egypt. And in Egypt, he spends time in prison where he gets a chance to reflect and decide on what God's will is for his life. With Sarah and Abraham, we have a struggle of when do we step in and try to speed things along and help God out? When do we take the initiative and when do we hold back? That's a great question. Paul continued to push when he did his preaching, knocking on doors. How do you know when you're being prompted to move in a certain direction? Or when do you think you're told to be still and know that God is? Move forward, be still. We each have enough promptings during the day of people we could call, family members that we could connect with, and should connect with, people we should forgive, people who need our forgiveness offered to them. Those promptings, God's will, we can move through. And if we did that every day, that would probably be a full day. It would be a full day. We move from this chapter, these chapters, nation building God style. God is looking for a people that will trust beyond reason. God is looking for a people that understand God's timing and that we are called to be faithful. We are called to be patient. We are called to be impatient. We are called to walk with God. May it be said of us that we are witnesses to the living God who still desires to walk with us and talk with us and form us into a new family. May we be that nation. Amen.